about that. So I'm Bridget Bailey. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Social Work. I also do adjunct in the Department of Behavioral Medicine and Psychiatry. And so my research is really on using dialectical behavior therapy skills in schools to prevent to increase mental health supports in schools, but also in college. So I adapted a course, Wellness and Resilience for College and Beyond, for social work education at the bachelor's level. And we're borrowing a lot of that material today. But I also, when I was over in behavioral medicine and psychiatry, did some work on compassion fatigue and promoting compassion satisfaction in healthcare professionals. So not just social workers, but they were included, and other healthcare professionals like psychologists, psychiatrists, nurses, and things like that. And looking at the levels of compassion fatigue and also how can we promote compassion satisfaction. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. And I also still do some clinical practice in dialectical behavior therapy and interpersonal psychotherapy. So stress and burnout for college students and graduate students. So NAMI, National Institute of Mental Health, in 2015 reported that the majority, 64% of students who experience mental health problems in college withdrew from school because of those mental health issues. And 50% of them never accessed any mental health services. Now, that number, I believe, is much higher at this point. I don't have the exact number, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic. We have just had it's our own epidemic of mental health issues, especially in young people and young adults, including college and graduate school age. Just this loneliness and social isolation leading to exacerbating depression and anxiety and debilitating stress. But stress and depression can be preventable and treatable. And the thing is, what we're going to talk about today is stress is not the culprit, it's how we handle stress. And stress is not in and of itself bad, and it's not the sole culprit. The main thing I want to talk about here is how we handle stress and the idea of making stress our friend. I'm not saying to make all stress our friend. There's many different types of stress, and some types we can be friendly with and use to our advantage. For example, some stress is we're going to talk about some stress is going to help us achieve our goals, but there's some stress that we don't want to make our friend, of course. Like if we were being harassed or discriminated against, I would never suggest that you just need to think about this differently or be better at dealing with those stressful experiences. We're talking about like the daily stress that is part of our life, like balancing work and school and our future social work careers, our current pressure to get good grades, things like that. How do we balance that and make stress our friend and, function optimally, so that also in the field we can get function our best and get the best client outcomes. So workplace stress and burnout, it's not just in college and graduate school. These feelings aren't just unique to the university, it's also common in the workplace. So almost 40% of workers report stress-related burnout, and this is much higher in the helping professions, the majority in the helping professions. And this has a huge cost on the economy, reduced productivity at work, and stress-related health conditions. It also interferes with job effectiveness and mental and physical well-being. and life satisfaction. But remember, it's not stress specifically, it's how we deal with stress. So moving on to compassion fatigue, this concept of compassion fatigue, because it's not just burnout. We hear burnout a lot. So compassion fatigue is emotional and physical exhaustion that results in decreased capacity for our empathy and compassion for others. And we know that those are the things that really are so important in our work with clients and what brought us to social work. You know, many of us just had this natural capacity for increased empathy and compassion for others. So we don't want to lose that. And compassion fatigue is composed of two different components. It's composed of burnout and secondary traumatic stress. Burnout is really that emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a low sense of personal accomplishment when working in a stressful environment. And secondary traumatic stress can be that vicarious trauma or as a result of learning about or witnessing traumatic experiences of others. So this could be witnessing someone dying alone without their loved ones on a COVID unit. So we saw that over in medicine when I was working during the COVID-19 pandemic, or when you're processing someone's PTSD and traumatic experiences with them, and you're processing that with them, and you are learning of their traumatic experiences in great detail. So I've experienced both throughout my career, but I've also been able to work through both and not experience professional impairment. So you can experience burnout and secondary traumatic stress, but then you can treat burnout and secondary traumatic stress so that it doesn't lead to professional impairment, because we talk about in our NASW Code of Ethics how if we're professionally impaired, it's against the Code of Ethics to then be practicing without treating that impairment, because we don't want to work to the detriment of our clients. So it's not everybody can experience these things. It's how we take care of ourselves and how we work to remedy this or prevent these ideally. So what happens is really our own wellness is crucial to our client outcomes, to their satisfaction, to their treatment outcomes. Like research says this, it's overwhelming. And but helping professions and social workers, our psychological wellness is increasingly rapidly declining. The majority of social workers helping professionals have report as elevated mental health symptoms, depression, anxiety, before and even more after the COVID-19 pandemic. Compassion fatigue, as we're saying here, is associated with even more increased depression, anxiety, substance use, death from suicide, reduced client safety, lower quality of care, increased healthcare costs, and just turnover and lack of retention. We know that there's high turnover in social work. We want to keep you in this profession. Something brought you here and you're passionate about it, and we want to keep you here, but we also want to keep you mentally and physically healthy. And we want to keep you satisfied with your job. That compassion satisfaction we're going to talk about later. So what is stress defined? It's just, if you think back to 9th grade science class, it's just your homeostatic balance out of equilibrium. It's just your whole body chemistry, temperature, glucose level, bloodstream, just out of balance. You're out of whack. It's not just mentally out of whack, it's physically out of whack. Okay, so looking at this curve, okay, there's a lot of research really saying about the level of stress, and we're going to make 3 points here. Look at the vertical y-axis. And this indicates the level of performance, while the x-axis or horizontal axis represents the amount of stress. And one of the most important things that should pop out is that you're seeing this upside down U, and you should notice that this inverted U is telling you that not all stress is bad. So this is actually a fact. So some level of stress, moderate stress, is good for us. It can motivate us. It can help us to do well on a test. It can help us to do better work with our clients. To study what are the best methods, what are the best treatment options, how can we best help these our clients, to improve our performance, concentration, decision-making. Really, moderate stress, it helps us be our best. Then it also tells two different stories. There's tipping points going in two directions. The first is on the left side, which shows us that having not enough stress doesn't trigger enough motivation. So we're bored, unenthused, ambivalent. We're just not interested or involved or compelled to perform. Okay. So we're not our best. And we're not stressed enough, actually. The other is on the right side, and it's saying too much stress is bad. And it's saying it's detrimental to our physical and mental well-being, and that we get impaired. We're a puddle on the floor, and we're no longer functioning, and we can't be helpful to ourselves, and we can't be helpful to the people that we want to serve. So it's really telling three stories that a moderate amount of stress helps us be the best person we can be, and that we want to be. Not enough stress, we're not motivated enough to be our best, and too much stress, we're that puddle on the floor and we can't function. So negative impacts of stress. It really, stress serves an evolutionary purpose, but sometimes we think that that saber-toothed tiger is chasing us in all kinds of situations that don't actually like hold gravity on our life. So it puts us in that incapacitated state, and there's not actually a saber-toothed tiger. It might even just be our mental processes, like thoughts going through our head. So when our allostatic load is high, that's stress, our bodies, our minds, and our behavior can be negatively affected. So anything from our body, from headaches to our cardiovascular system to all the way to adult onset diabetes is affected by stress. Also things in our mind, there's different brain processes like our hippocampus and our ability to retrieve memories and important information, the amygdala, which is the brain center for our emotions. So that is really why stress is associated with many anxiety disorders. Also the frontal cortex, which is really responsible for that delayed gratification, being self-disciplined, long-term planning. That means when we're super stressed, we make those boneheaded, regrettable decisions that like haunt us later on, and we just can't let go. That shame. So that's with when our behavior is just erratic, when our stress kind of just breaks down our decision-making capabilities. So type in the chat, how do you know when you're under too much stress, when you're on that downside of the curve? When you can't enjoy things you normally enjoy, not sleeping well, patience is reduced or depersonalized, just crying to an unreasonable level, not eating, completing tasks. Yeah, unorganized, messy, reactive, dissociative. Yeah, all of these things. Yeah, task paralysis, angry at smaller things, that irritability. Yeah, so it's good to know our triggers. It's good to know, like, a lot of these things could be signs of different things, but it's good to notice, like, this is abnormal for me. This is showing me that I'm not, this is not my baseline. This is showing me that I'm stressed. Something is off. Oh, I'm having trouble in my interpersonal relationships. Exactly. Okay, so stress versus a stressor. We feel stressed when we believe that we lack the ability to manage things, that and we are knocked off our homeostasis. So the thing is that there's a difference between stressors. Like, our car doesn't care if it breaks down. The car's the stressor. Like, our bank account doesn't care if it's empty. We care. So stress is the physiological response when you feel a stressor. So we're not talking about stress that we experience as a result of discrimination, systemic or structural oppression. We do not need to make this type of stress our friend. Again, we need to dismantle and eradicate that. But we do want to be able to handle and think differently about the day-to-day stress that might happen, like obsessing over perfect grades or missing the bus. And also, how you think about stress matters a lot. Chasing meaning and purpose in life is more important than trying to avoid stress. We're all going to experience stress, and you need to be able to tolerate stress to a certain level. So being able to make meaning out of that stress. So, it's kind of that, like, fall down 7 times, get up 8 is the secret to success. People don't just become successful overnight. They fail. It's that failing upward is what I talk to my students about. Like, how have you felt like failed upward in your life? Like, it took me years to finish my undergrad. And some people think, like, oh, it's a failure if you take more than 4 years to finish undergrad. But I'm a professor now, and it doesn't matter how many years it took me to finish my undergrad. I failed upward because this is what I always wanted to be, and now I am it. So I failed upward because I didn't give up. I fell down 7 times and I got up 8. So if we're afraid of failing and we can't get back up after we fail, we're never going to succeed. So it's about creating meaning and purpose out of life when we fail and when we meet those stressors. So making stress your friend. Here's a little video.
I have a confession to make. For years, I've been telling people stress makes you sick. But I've changed my mind about stress. I want to change yours. Let me start with the study that tracked 30,000 adults in the United States for 8 years. And they started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? People who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. But that was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful for your health. People who experienced a lot of stress but did not view stress as harmful, they had the lowest risk of dying of anyone in the study. 182,000 Americans died prematurely from the belief that stress is bad for you. I want you all to pretend that you are participants in a study. You come into the laboratory. You have to give a 5-minute impromptu speech on your personal weaknesses to a panel of expert evaluators sitting right in front of you. Now, if you were actually in this study, you'd probably be a little stressed out. Your heart might be pounding, you might be breathing faster. Normally, we interpret these physical changes as anxiety, but what if you viewed them instead as signs that your body was preparing you to meet this challenge? Now, that is exactly what participants were told in a study conducted at Harvard University. And participants who learned to view the stress response as helpful, well, they were less stressed out, less anxious, more confident. Their physical stress response changed. Now, in a typical stress response, your heart rate goes up and your blood vessels constrict. But in the study, when participants viewed their stress response as helpful, their blood vessels stayed relaxed like this. Their heart was still pounding, but this is a much healthier cardiovascular profile. It's a lot like what happens in moments of courage. We need to talk about a hormone, oxytocin. Oxytocin makes you crave physical contact with your friends and family. It enhances your empathy. Your pituitary gland pumps this stuff out as part of the stress response. And one of its main roles in your body is to protect your cardiovascular system from the effects of stress. Your heart has receptors for this hormone, and oxytocin helps heart cells regenerate from any stress-induced damage. I want to finish by telling you about one more study. This study tracked about 1,000 adults in the United States, and they started the study by asking, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, how much time have you spent helping out friends? People who spent time caring for others showed absolutely no stress-related increase in dying, 0. When you choose to view your stress response as helpful, you create the biology of courage. And when you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. Thank you.
Okay. So I like that because it really redefines stress. We're moving on to resilience here. And I was having a debate with another professor in psychology the other day, and she said, can you really be resilient if you haven't experienced adversity? What do people think about that? Can you be resilient if you haven't experienced adversity? Put it in the chat if you don't want to. Yes, because adversity is subjective. I think there's many ways to define adversity. It's a reaction to adversity. That was largely my argument. What is her definition of adversity? You know, because we can't always see adversity, you know. And the point here is, people used to think that resilience was like this magic quality. It was originally researched in this longitudinal study of children over years and years, a subgroup of kids, like studied over their whole life of kids, who just had been exposed to all this adversity, who just defied the odds. They had cards stacked against them. They had been exposed to all these ACEs, the adverse childhood experience. They had, and they just went on to not only lead what you call normal lives, but just thrive and be so successful and overcome life's challenges. And people thought that this was just, they had some kind of quality, but research really revealed that resilience is an ordinary process and it can be learned. So we can all learn and achieve resilience with the right supports. And we can demonstrate enormous courage, as she said, compassion, and the ability to move forward in life with the most difficult personal histories. Now, I do want to say the right supports are not always equally distributed in society, and we know that. Recent research has said even that money does increase happiness. It's not direct relationship, but people who have more supports, including money, have can have more happiness because they have less stressors like hunger and stable housing, things like that. Other supports are things we know, like protective factors, like one supportive, unconditionally loving adult in a child's life is one of the most protective factors you can have, despite multiple adversities. So this is really about the concept of surviving versus thriving. And I talk to my clients about this a lot. Like, you are surviving right now. Sometimes they're just existing. They're not even surviving, because they're not even fighting anymore. They're just there. And I'm like, we want to get you to thriving. And I was like, but first we want to get you to living. Because then, we want to get you from surviving to living to thriving. And the thing is, if we as social workers are just surviving, how are we going to get our clients to thriving if we're just surviving? It's like, we're going to talk about that oxygen mask that you always have that comparison on the airplane when the mom has to put her oxygen, or parent has to put their oxygen mask on first, because if they put it on their child first, then they're going to pass out, and then they're not going to be able to take care of their child. So they have to put it on themselves first. It's the same thing as social workers. We have to take care of ourselves just as much as we want that we preach to our clients. We have to be thriving in order to help our clients thrive. So the point is really that we all can have resilience. It's just ordinary magic. But we have to build it, and we have to work at it. And that's what's going to keep us successful in this field. And that's going to help us not burn out and have compassion fatigue. We have to fill that piggy bank with living life to our values, time with friends, practicing gratitude, and that will help protect us and also combat that stress and isolation and those negative thoughts. So you want to build your wellness with as many strong positives, so that when you're hit with those stress, because stress is going to come, and that adversity and setbacks are going to come, but it's not going to hit you so hard or keep you down so long if you have those reserves built up. So compassion satisfaction, we're going to talk about, is the inverse of compassion fatigue. It's the positive feeling you experience when helping others. And that is what we all want. It mitigates psychological distress. It's protective against that psychological impairment that we never want to experience. And and studies show actually that peer support literature shows that like peer support literature shows that of people with mental illness, not social workers, but people with mental illness who are a peer support worker of another person. So they help them, support them with case management, but they themselves have a mental illness. The peer supporter actually has more mental health benefits than the person that they're supporting. And that's like compassion satisfaction. It's like the act of helping someone else improves your mental health more than the mental health of the person you're helping. So that mitigates your own psychological distress of helping somebody else. And so we're going to talk about preventing that compassion fatigue and building that compassion satisfaction, because it's harder to treat burnout and compassion fatigue than to prevent it and to build compassion satisfaction. So that's why we want to help you not be burnout and have compassion fatigue now, and to build your compassion satisfaction, so that, you know, so that you can have this wellness toolbox to go into the field, so that you prevent the burnout and compassion fatigue, or at least you can catch it early, and it's not as hard to treat. So there's many things you can do, and this is only an hour, but one thing you can do is refreshers. Refreshers are, they're called therapeutic lifestyle changes. They come from, if you want to read up on them more, they come from Roger Welch of the University of California, Irvine. And it's research on effective lifestyle changes. And he really concluded that these are lifestyle changes that support your wellness effectively, that are free or inexpensive, which is helpful when you are a student. Because I remember being a student and like not being able to afford groceries. It was like not that long ago, super stressful. And far fewer side effects than taking medication. So that's good. Not that I'm telling you not to take medication if your doctor says that that's going to be helpful for you, but this can be helpful too. But you have to make an active commitment, and you have to make this a habit and a lifestyle change, you know, and habits and lifestyle changes take time. You have to keep doing them over and over, long-term, until they almost become muscle memory, like riding a bike. Okay. You can't just do them once and get the benefit. The more you do them, the more beneficial they're going to be for you. And this is an acronym, refresher, and we're going to talk about it. So we're going to talk about the mind-body connection. These are all about the mind-body connection, these refreshers. So there's this deep reciprocal connection between our mind and our body. Okay, each can support each other, each can drag each other down. So low mental health is associated with all kinds of physical ailments, and then all kinds of physical ailments are associated with low mental health. Think about someone who has cancer, also has a high chance of having like depression. You know, think about someone who has depression, has more chance of having cardiovascular issues and other things like that, and chronic pain. So what is one way you take care of your body or your mind? Put it in the chat. Outdoors, time with friends, yoga, going to the gym, naps, sleep and movement. Exactly. Okay, these are all refreshers. It's not brain science. Okay. But it's about intentionally doing these and making these a priority in your life. It's like when you say, I don't have time to exercise. It's like, well, you do. You have 10 minutes a day, you know, and it doesn't have to be an hour. And we're told things in society that exercise is about our bodies looking a certain way, and that we value certain body types and shapes over others. And there's a right amount of exercise, and we have to get over those cognitive distortions of like that I only exercise to look a certain way, or exercise is only if I do CrossFit for an hour. You know, exercise can also be walking for 10 minutes just to have the mental benefit of having some more energy and to get outside for that light and, you know, to move our bodies, you know, like 10 minutes of walking is exercise, you know. So I could spend a whole lecture on this, but relationships, like all of this is backed by science. You know, the whole therapy I do on interpersonal psychotherapy is about building social supports and relationships and the bidirectional effect of your mood, improving your mood, like mood disorders, bipolar disorder and depression, and increasing social supports and resolving interpersonal problems. So having better interpersonal relationships and increasing your social supports and decreasing your social isolation improves your mood. And we know the same thing with exercise. It improves your mood, your energy, and your physical health. And redefining in your mind what exercise means and what you do it for. Fun, recreation, and enjoyable activities. I remember in grad school thinking, I'm not allowed to do anything but study. Like I remember being at a farmer's market and seeing my professor and feeling like super guilty that I wasn't home working and like justifying to her that like, oh no, I'm going home to do this, you know, like that. We're allowed to have lives and it's going to make us better students and better social workers if we do enjoyable activities and we work those into our everyday lives, you know. And that was my distortion, you know, it wasn't her saying that to me. And relaxation and stress management. And that also goes along with like sufficient sleep. You know, it is important. We are our best when we have sufficient sleep and we are able to relax. And what I mean by relax is not just binge watch 5 hours of Netflix, but the whole time you're zoning out and thinking, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. You know, that's not relaxing. It's giving yourself a break and saying, I'm going to take an hour and I'm going to give myself permission to just do nothing. And I don't have to feel bad about it. Like all I have to be doing in this moment is relaxing and like relaxing to the best of my ability, you know? It's like fully participating in relaxation. And eating well and nutrition. We all know that it's not just for us to get our bodies the way we want it. It's also for our minds, and our mood. Sufficient sleep. I'm all about sleep and, I would rather, and I'm sure other professors feel this way. I would much rather you email me and say, so sorry, I did not manage my time right. But I would like an extension or can we negotiate something, you know, like, then you pull an all-nighter, you know, that's just not healthy and that's not a healthy habit to get into, you know. Different people might have different policies on that kind of thing or negotiate different things, but like, that's not promoting good self-care. So I definitely miss deadlines sometimes because I think, do I need to sacrifice some sleep? No, that's one of my boundaries. We talked about helping others, getting out in nature. We know that sunlight also improves your mood. The earlier you get outside during the day, the better your mood is. Like research just says that the closer you are to water more often, the better your mood is. Having a sense of purpose, it doesn't have to be religion or certain spirituality. If that is a trigger for you or you have a negative experience with that, that can be finding your own sense of meaning and purpose and self-actualization. It can mean whatever it can mean many different things. A sense of purpose and meaning. Religion is very meaningful and purpose and important to some people, and for other people, this means something else. But meaning and sense of purpose is very guiding in our life and can get us out of and can help build our resilience. So our last part is what to do about compassion fatigue. What do we do when we do hit that down part of the curve? What do we do when we are at the point where our empathy is spent? What I mean by is I am a dialectical behavior therapist, so that is working with people who are the most suicidal. And I love working with people with really high acuity because I've seen such great results. I've seen people on their adolescents on their 12th suicide attempt in 2 years, turn their life around and be doing beautifully and going to college, or graduating high school. I've seen adults on like over 20th suicide attempt in 2 years. And then they're back to work, and they have a new relationship with a partner that's healthy, and their life is just worth living to them, their definition of life worth living and quality of life. So I love working with people with high acuity, but when I'm in compassion fatigue, it's a Friday at 4 o'clock and someone comes in my office and they're suicidal. I'm like, oh, I just want to go home. That's my compassion fatigue. It's when I no longer have empathy that someone is in my office and doesn't want to live. And I'm just thinking about, I want to go home, and that's human, but that's compassion fatigue, and that's showing me that I need to do something because I'm not my best self. And I'm not my best self for my clients because I'm spent. So we use our distress tolerance. What do I mean by that? Okay, so we all have emotion-provoking buttons. We all have, our emotions are cues, they tell us things. We go from calm to not calm, okay? And it's really important to be in tune with our emotions because they're there for a reason. They're evolutionary, they tell us things, but they're different from person to person. People who come from oppressed groups may have different buttons than other people. So you need to understand what are your buttons. So awareness of our buttons is key to managing our emotions. We need to understand our values, our thoughts and reactions to situations to manage our emotions. And we need to understand our button categories and even how small changes can get us upset in certain situations. And thoughts about the past can be huge buttons for us. And also how some of these buttons might then turn into countertransference for us when we're working with our clients. Like what's going on in front of us is causing, the person is causing some countertransference with some of our buttons of past thoughts or situations. And so really understanding our emotions and our buttons can be really helpful to the best client care and then seeking supervision. So how do we cope with intense emotions? Usually just not so well. And it's because of that amygdala hijack. It's that emotional dysregulation. It's when we're really just at that point where our prefrontal cortex isn't functioning and we're just not making good decisions and we're just not rationally and logically thinking. Our emotion mind takes over and we're making mood dependent decisions. So it's really when we are going into our fight, flight, or freeze. And it can also be things that, like sometimes our response is, our fight response is we fight with ourselves. We're being really harsh on ourselves. And sometimes our flight response looks like social withdrawal. And sometimes our freeze response looks like we get stuck on our own thoughts. We're perseverating on something over and over again that happened during the day. It's like those up all night thoughts. So again, just that emotional dysregulation is the inability to control your emotions anymore. So you want to use these distress tolerance skills like during crisis or when you're at that compassion fatigue. How do you know when you're in emotional crisis? It doesn't necessarily mean a crisis is going around. It's like a crisis in your head too. And it's when you, on your emotional thermometer, are at a 65 or above. So you want to stop and think of what emotions and behaviors and situations push you into emotional dysregulation. Like what thoughts in your head, what body sensations, you know, and what emotions. We are running out of time, so we're going a little faster. My biggest thing, especially when you're at a 75 or higher, like, is the TIPP scale. This is like a 2-minute video I will show you. This is the first thing I also teach clients who are very emotionally dysregulated. So the thing is, when you're learning how to build your own reserves and you're getting really good at it and it's muscle memory for you, you're going to be able to really teach it to your clients because you do it so well. And then you're not just saying, hey, you have to do this. You're just saying, this is just a normal thing that people need to learn. And just to function well in life. And you're going to be really good at selling it because you're just normalizing it to them.
The TIPP technique. Tolerating times where you feel completely overwhelmed by your emotions can be tough. When we feel a strong wave of emotion coming over us, such as fear or anger, our ability to think clearly is diminished, and we often make unwise decisions or do things we might regret later. TIPP skills are designed to work quickly to bring down emotional arousal. Often, if we can just tolerate the first few seconds or minutes of our distress, then we'll find ourselves in a much better position to make decisions about how to handle the situation. T. Temperature. If it's safe to do so, placing your whole face in cold water can trigger the dive reflex, which will bring down your heart rate. You can also trigger this by splashing cold water on your face and holding your breath. Raising your body temperature increases your blood pressure and can be comforting when you're feeling sad. Try holding a hot water bottle or taking a hot bath. I. Intense exercise. Getting your heart rate up can decrease anxiety and increase positive emotions. 20 minutes of intense exercise is enough to do this, and is helpful if you're feeling angry, agitated, or finding that unhelpful thoughts are going round and round in your head. P. Paced breathing. Slow, controlled breathing, where your exhale is longer than your inhale, will decrease your heart rate and send a message to your brain that you're calm and safe. Try breathing in through your nose for 4 seconds and breathing out through your mouth for 6 seconds for a couple of minutes. P. Progressive muscle relaxation. Our muscles tense up when we're feeling intense emotion. Work through your body, becoming aware of each muscle from the top of your head to your toes and deliberately tightening them, then relaxing each one. Remember, TIPP skills provide a quick way to reduce intense, overwhelming emotions. However, the emotions happen for a reason. Once you've brought the emotion down, take some time to deal with the situation which caused the emotion in the first place.
Okay, so those are the TIPP skills. And that's when you're at your highest emotional intensity. And that really brings down the emotional intensity. And distress tolerance skills are designed for you not to make a situation worse, for you not to send that angry text or email to your boss, for you not to use substances to change your mood. You know, for you not to do that impulsive thing. It's not to make you feel better, it's to lower your emotional intensity. Other skills are the distract skills, that we're not gonna have time to go over. But it's temporarily distracting from your distress to lower your emotional intensity enough to then use problem-solving skills or emotion regulation skills to actually change your emotions. This is just lowering the intensity, not changing the emotion, just lowering the intensity so that you get to a point where you're not in that emotional dysregulation amygdala hijack. But you don't want to use distract skills to distract your life away. Like it says activities, you could like watch Netflix, but if you watch Netflix for like 12 hours a day and don't go to work, then you're interfering with your quality of life. So the last thing is, what's the difference? Refreshers are for prevention. Refreshers are for how do we build up that piggy bank? How do we make ourselves resilient and make it so that when stress comes, we're able to bounce back and it doesn't stick around so long. And, you know, we're able to, you know, fall down and get back up. And distress tolerance is for how do we get through the stress when it happens? It'd be great if you don't experience burnout or compassion fatigue in your career and your social work education. It's highly likely that you will. Just hopefully it's not often and long, you know. So if you have these strategies, if you build up your toolbox, you know, then you'll be able to really, you know, both prevent it and then treat it when it comes around, so that you can be your best self and also be your best self for your clients. So we have a couple minutes if people have any questions. I have a bad habit of talking the whole time.
So while folks are typing in the chat, I just want to thank Dr. Bailey for taking the time to present. I know she's got a busy end of the semester, as we all do. So, and I echo what Dr. Morrow said about it being good to see all of our students here. Some of you I see weekly, others I don't see that often. So it's nice to see you here. Any final questions or thoughts? Can grad students take your class? Bridget, what do you say?
I hope that we could maybe make that an option at some point, not at this point. Yeah, but you know, we've thought about, you know, doing some kind of version or something. I think that that's a good thing to consider. Yeah. But I hope this was helpful today, you know. Something I feel passionate about. Hopefully it's helpful for you.
Well, if there's no final questions, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Bailey again, and thank you to everybody who is here. And I hope your semesters all end smoothly and that you are able to take a little bit of time to engage in some of that self-care that we talked about in between now and when the summer semester starts up. So thank you, and I hope you all have a good rest of the week.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Thank you, Dr. Bailey.